So good morning. I'm with Andrew Featherstone from Featherstone Property Services. Andrew, I met you quite a few years ago now at my Wandsworth property meet. Wandsworth property meet's been going for the last 6+ years. I think you spoke there about 3 years ago, the last time, and you've spoken more recently at my Covent Garden meet. So you're a developer, mostly properties based in the Dorset area. So thanks for joining me this morning.
Good morning, Brendan. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. So just to go into a little bit more detail about yourself, I know you're quite an active networker. I know you've raised significant amounts of money, but for those people who've never heard of you before, how would you like to be described, and what do you say you do in property, Andrew?
Well, I'm an investor and developer. I've built my portfolio over about the last 13 years up to a scale of about £15 million worth of property. And I've done that mainly through refurbishment conversions of properties, mainly flats, some houses, but mainly flats. I've bought, increased the value by refurbishment, and then either sold on or I've refinanced in order to get my working capital back again, and then done another project, another project, another project. So we're up to about 155 rental properties now in the portfolio, some in Dorset, some in the rest of the country. I do quite a lot of refurbishments and conversions to sell as well.
Sure. And in terms of systemization, that's key to your business, I would take it. I can see the folders just on your right, but I'm sure you also use online software, or maybe you don't. What's key in terms of systemization for you?
Well, obviously the most important thing is a very good bookkeeper who keeps things up to date every single week, because I've got quite a lot of different businesses. I've got 20 different joint venture partners as well. So we have 20 separate businesses. So it's key to keep the bookkeeping side up to scratch. I've got a program called Landlord Manager, which links with Sage. So once we input the details into Sage, the accounting program, then it links into a Landlord Manager program as well. So you don't have to input data twice. And that is a platform that we use to manage the properties. I mean, to be honest, it's not 100%, but we're continually trying to make it work better for us. But it has potential to do it. We just need to get that into action much better.
Sure. So in terms of your background, you came from a building background, from what I understand. And I know quite a bit about you from speaking at my events before and so forth, and listening to you on a podcast with Mike Stenhouse. Although, to be fair, it was quite an interesting podcast because I learned one of your ambitions is to move into the farming industry at some point. But before you move into that industry, where do you see yourself going for the next couple of years? And has your strategy changed because of Brexit and other government red tape?
I mean, strategy is changing all the time according to the market. When I started in 2003, we had 3 or 4 good years, good market conditions. I managed to refurbish and sell quite a few in that stage. Obviously, we then had the recession in 2008. It became harder to borrow money at that point. So that's when I started doing joint venture with other people for other people who input capital. We picked up quite a few properties quite cheaply in 2008-9 from distressed builders, distressed sellers to build a portfolio like that. And then as finance became a little bit easier, we started to do more refurbishments and selling on. Now the market is better. Got a good selling market down in the south. Northern properties are very hard to sell still, but in the south it's good for selling. And then my strategy changed in terms of financing when I realised that it's much easier and much more pleasant and certain to raise money privately to do the projects, refurbish them, and then at the end, if I want to keep them, refinance them with a bank or a buy-to-let lender, and then pay back my individual private investors in that way. And so things just change all the time depending on the market conditions and finance availability.
Sure. In terms of people listening to this video who, let's say, are not based in London, based somewhere else. In fact, I've got people based listening to these videos in countries such as Cyprus. In terms of opportunities, what type of opportunities are of interest for you, for people to contact you, who may not necessarily be able to come along to the live event on Tuesday? So Tuesday the 20th, in only a couple of days' time, my Wandsworth property meet. I'm delighted Andrew will be one of my guest speakers. But the key question is, what opportunities would be of interest to you, maybe even in the room, who are attending that night?
I'm not. I have projects sort of going on all the time. I am looking for new projects all the time, doing analysis of figures on different sites and projects. So at certain times, I have investment opportunities that people can join me in if they want to. Some people use it as quite a sort of learning experience. The fact that they can invest some money, get a good return, fixed return, and over the period of the project, maybe it's a year or something, that they can interact with me, come visit site, attend site meetings, and use it as a learning process as well. So therefore, they get a good rate of return on their capital. They get exposure to a property project and all the sort of different factors they have to bear in mind, which then they can easily then use when I pay them back at the end. They can then use to go off and do their own projects if they feel confident to do that. So I do have opportunities coming up on a fairly regular basis.
It is quite interesting, because one of the similar questions I've asked in a number of different interviews about if someone was starting today, and their point was to look at doing joint ventures with a more experienced investor. So in terms of, we've looked at raising finance, but we're looking at this fairly briefly because we're going to go into a lot more detail on Tuesday. What other things will you be going into detail with? I know you'll be talking about how you raise finance, and you look at I would say the non-traditional methods of raising finance, but what other things will you be covering on Tuesday at Wandsworth, which is easy to get to, by the way? It's direct trains from Waterloo to Wandsworth, and the venue's directly opposite Wandsworth Town Station as well. I
mean, what I want to do on Tuesday is do a worked example of my current project, which is a conversion from offices into flats. It's actually a grade 2 listed building as well, which adds further complications. But I want to look at, to go through it as a worked example, because that's when I come to property meetings, that's what I want to see speakers present is, how did you find it? How did you select it? How did you do your initial figures on whether it's worth pursuing or not? How did you choose a builder, and what contracts did you have in place? I want to see photographs, I want to see figures. How did you structure the financing? I'll go through how I raise money privately for it, and how I then switch to commercial finance. And then how do you grant leases, and what factors do you have to consider doing that? Because obviously you're granting leases and trying to sell off a plan before the flats are ready. So it'll be a complete sort of guide to a worked example of a property project.
Sure. I'll be adding a caption into the video to let people know how they can book on for Tuesday evening. Andrew, for those who can't make it, what's the best way of connecting with you? Is it directly through your website?
I mean, I've got a button on my website which you subscribe to newsletter, and so I send out fairly regular, so quarterly newsletters showing you what I've been up to and what projects I've been up to, any investment opportunities, and also I send out video links of updates on projects. So, for instance, on my latest project, I've done about 3 or 4 updates every 3 months or something, just describing how we're getting on, what problems we face, how we've got over them, and so that's probably the best way to subscribe to my newsletter, and people can then be abreast of what's happening and how they might be involved if they want to, or if they just want to sort of watch and see how projects are progressing, then that's fine.
Brilliant. Andrew, I just want to say thanks for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Don't think so, Brendan. No, thanks very much.
So as I say, Andrew will be joining us this coming Tuesday evening at Wandsworth. easy to get to, direct trains from Waterloo. As I say, the venue's a lovely Alma. It's a ticketed event, so do book online. There'll be a link at the end of the video to tell you how to book. And just want to say huge thanks for your time, Andrew.
Thank you. See you Tuesday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.